In my head, I was thinking of hope as this enabling virtue. I think that charity is a foundational virtue.
Hope enables charity insofar as charity is what enables us to give ourselves to something more than ourselves.
Because it's selfless. Because if you focus on love, it's just like everything is oriented for the good of others, and it's not about yourself.
If charity is not your foundation for determining what you want to do with your money and your goals, what's the alternative? It's pursuing money for its own sake, which I think is the equivalent to building your house on the sand. Because when you desire money for its own end, how do you think you will react when you are faced with adversity along the way?
Welcome to the Your Life podcast, where we talk about how to integrate the virtues into our life and our finances. My name is Anthony De Lazzari, Associate Investment Advisor.
Sean Gregory, Portfolio Manager.
AJ Sanson, Associate Investment Advisor.
We are with Serviam Capital at I Private Wealth, and our goal is to serve you so that your finances may serve your goals and your goals may serve the good.
So I'm getting ready to come to the office this morning, go down to the garage. I'm about to get in the van when I realize, oh no, the kids were playing in the van last night. And anytime this has happened, they've left a door open, they've left a light on, the battery's drained. And I'm thinking, I'm sure when I go to turn this thing on, I'm going to get no power. So I get in, well, Kate, no lights left on. I think the doors are closed. Turns on. Wow, this is great. I can't believe how surprised I am that they did not drain the battery in the van. Okay, pull out of the driveway. It's a nice sunny day. The sun hits the windshield, and the transparent glass immediately becomes completely translucent, a pastel gray sheen of fingerprints and handprints and toe prints and footprints so thick. See the red, which I have to say is a better outcome than having drained the battery.
So did you drive with it?
Yes, I drove with it.
Nice.
Yeah, I should. I was able to wipe it enough to see, I think, safely.
Yeah.
Here, this comes back to
You got here safely.
Resourceful versus stingy with your time. I was probably being stingy with my time. I should have got cleaner and wiped the whole thing. In hindsight, I will do that next time. But you know what I was? I was hopeful that I was going to get to the office with, moderately obstructed vision in the sunshine. Anthony, what are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about hope, but before we get into hope, I think we're going to dabble with a little faith and then get into charity.
What were you thinking?
Well, are we going to talk about charity this time? I thought we could do charity unbundled as another one.
Well, yeah, we might. It might naturally lead into charity. Otherwise, our next episode will be on charity. I had some ideas about faith because hope, as Aquinas says, denotes a movement or stretching forth of the appetite towards an arduous good, which is possible to obtain. But in order to do that, we first kind of have to have faith that this thing is good and that this thing is worth attaining. So faith is a substance, as Thomas Aquinas says, faith is a substance of things to be hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So when it comes to wanting fulfillment, we have to have faith that we're going to be fulfilled in the future. And then hope is that virtue that enables us to endure and to go through with those things.
I think we need to first distinguish theological hope from more everyday hope, let's say, secular hope.
Like optimism.
Right, yeah. So properly understood, hope as a virtue concerns God. Concerns that you have confidence in God's assistance to see you to a good end, and whatever that means to you. Now, I don't think we can directly translate that over as a financial virtue, other than to say, I don't think a person can say, I have hope in the divine, and therefore my finances are going to work out well. Because I think is often the case, or can be the case, that your financial hardship leads to spiritual fruit. And sometimes you need to go through that to get to a better place spiritually. Now, if you are in financial hardship, that theological hope will be incredibly powerful and strengthening for you to persevere and to get through it, for the spiritual fruit that comes through that. But as pertains to more everyday hope, I think we can extrapolate the basic tenets of hope generally, which is, as you say, more a sense of optimism. It's that virtue that keeps you away from the temptation to be excessively negative or pessimistic, and also properly exercised is not presumptuous of a good outcome. Any thoughts there?
So I think of like optimism. It could be just a blind optimism. I think things will work out, and then just do nothing about it. I think the distinction with hope is there's an element, you kind of know what the ideal end outcome is, but recognize that there has to be a perseverance, a grit to it that you have to work at, despite the representation of a less than ideal outcome at present. But you have you're enduring this is because you know that things can change with a continued action. So I think of like, I'll use the example because it's basketball season. It's like you could be down 20 points on the scoreboard and you could just be like, I think it'll work out well. But I think an element of hope, which requires a sense like we got to work at this, we got to stay dedicated to winning this game. What can we do to change the outcome and trust that things will work out for the best? I think that's more representation of hope as opposed to, oh, we'll see where it goes. We're going to drop all our game plans and just we'll see this to the end.
It can't be passive. It has to be active because there's a goal that is being pursued. There's a good that is being pursued. And that pursuit involves action. It can't just be like a passive, I'm going to stand back and hope for the best. But no, like we have to take action, but then have faith that that's going to work out.
Right.
So I thought of exactly what you're saying, but from not a different point of view, but just with different words. So I was thinking that hope, it's kind of this enabling virtue. That if you have hope that there can be a positive outcome, that you can win the game, then you can exercise your skill to win the game. Or if you need patience or longanimity, long suffering in this moment, hope enables you to do that because you can imagine a positive outcome. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but without hope, you're just going to throw in the towel and completely give up.
Right.
You're going to despair. So hope, I think, is essential to, as I said, enable those other virtues, but we cannot rely on hope on its own. And that's where you're saying, whereas I was thinking of it as naive optimism, that this will work out because it's always worked out, and I don't need to really try because I'm relying on the hope. But on its own, you can't. So it has to be paired with these other virtues.
There's a participation, cooperation, essentially.
Well, I was also going to say that it has to have a foundation, faith. Then faith, as JP2 describes it, has 4 different elements. First is the seeking, right? So it's looking for whatever is true. Second is finding, right? Accepting that as true. And then consistency and constancy. So living it throughout your life in every way in your life. And so I think you have a good foundation in that faith, then you're able to hope for those great things. If you have a good foundation of truth in what your purpose is, then it's going to be all the more easy and all the more virtuous to have hope in whatever that purpose is.
Yeah. So to take it back to AJ's example, you have to believe that winning the game is good.
Yes,
is something to pursue.
It's a thing that's
is worthy of
action.
your
Yeah.
effort and grit and determination and all those things. And you have to be able to hope it's possible.
Yeah. And then from there, you're able to take action, which I guess would be charity in that sense, that giving of self to a greater cause that doesn't just benefit you.
Well, I think it could be any of the virtues. So I think it enables many of the virtues, of which can never be applied in whatever circumstance. But I think there's a specific partner virtue of hope in this everyday kind of hope, this optimistic sort of hope, which is caution. That sub-virtue of prudence. And then I think they have to go together. And it's the caution that pulls you back from that naive optimism, that keeps you grounded in reality, that keeps you aware and considering all of the still possible ways it can go wrong, and the actions you need to take to mitigate them so that doesn't happen.
I would say, though, that hope does lead to charity, because if we're trying to be the best version of ourselves, and this goes back to our Why Serviam podcast, if the foundation of our action comes from having a purpose, our hope enables us to kind of see that thing through. But then any sort of virtue that we try and practice has to, or ideally should, have to do with others. So hope enables charity insofar as charity is what enables us to give ourselves to something more than ourselves. Otherwise, we might risk falling into self-absorption or just being optimistic for the end goal of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think it's charity and other things. Though.
Yeah. Like Thomas Aquinas says, charity is the form of the virtues since it directs them to their last end. So it's through charity that all of these different virtues are able to be directed to their last end,
right,
which is outside of ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, not just directed back at ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we can unpack all this in relation to the financial planning process too. It works quite well. Is let's say we determine and build a financial plan which outlines what that end goal is, what can test our hope, our optimism, our pessimism is in the moment where something doesn't go according to plan. Let's say, for example, an investment doesn't work out. It doesn't work out, and you could easily just say, screw it, I'm out, I'm selling everything, I'm reacting in a very pessimistic way of things. But then with the reminder that, okay, hey, remember we have a financial plan? This was a known possibility. This end goal is still good, so let's still persevere in that. And then if you apply an element of meaning and purpose to the end goals that alludes to the charity component, is let's say, for example, this is the end good because I know I'm trying to build a legacy for my children. I'm trying to build a legacy for these philanthropic causes. So it gives an element of charity, or because there's a love attributed to that particular goal.
Yeah, because the goal is outside of myself. I'm not just so obsessed with myself where it's like, oh, like I'm the person who's suffering because of this. And in the future, I'm going to be the person who suffers because of this. Well, no, I'm suffering now, but it's for others, which we said, again, isn't anything bad. It's actually the definition of love, to suffer and sacrifice for another.
Right. What were your thoughts in terms of the...
That's what I was going to say about charity.
I stole it from
That's
you.
a different virtue.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I think that's 100% correct what you're saying, is that if you have those good goals and they are based on other people, then you are more able to hope for them, and you are more able, or just able at all, to persevere through the adversity and the difficulty that comes up along the way. So I was also thinking about hope from the investor perspective.
Okay.
And sort of understated, but really powerful virtue. If you... And it relates to your ability to imagine a really good outcome. You know, if we're making an investment today in a company whose future is unknown, we know that there is some probability of good outcomes and bad outcomes, but we have this tendency to anchor to whatever's happening now, or to, you know, the recency bias that we extrapolate the most recent past to the near future. But there are many times where you find a company, a small business, and maybe it has a lot of debt, and maybe it's not profitable today, but they're doing something really phenomenally interesting or innovative, and that the future of this business is so radically different from what it is today. And it's that optimism, which comes from the hope of a good outcome, that opens up your imagination to be able to see this in a completely different way.
So higher process is like you see greatness, and reasonably so, to attain it.
And not even you see greatness, but you see the potential for greatness, that you can imagine an outcome that is so different from today, or so different from their recent past. And it does happen. We see companies who radically change the world, and they all started out as a crazy idea that many people said was not going to work. And there are many crazy ideas that don't work, that actually did not work. That's also true. Which is where the caution comes in, to realize this could really be something. This could be really something amazing, but maybe the outcome, the likelihood of that outcome is small. But I think many people have a problem even opening up their minds to the possibility of that those things can happen. Because it takes some creativity, it takes some imagination, and it takes an ability to see things very different than they are today or have been. Right. And I think that comes from hope.
Yeah, but I think it also comes a lot from the ability to recognize the reality of where that company is and where the world's at. To be able to understand, hey, there's this problem that exists, and this company is so well positioned to fix this. And it's a problem worth fixing. And I think that maybe that comes from faith in people's ability to solve problems, to really recognize, yeah, this is a problem that's worth fixing. I think there's a good that is going to come out of this company. It's going to create value for people, and the ability to recognize that then enables you to make a good decision around it.
I think also a thing that enables you is because you're participating in this. There's an element of like you're cooperating in this and helping this hopeful outcome come to realization because your participation of it all.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're part of something good, great.
Yeah. Which again, you do have to be careful, because you could convince yourself of a very bad investment decision going well. But then part of that comes back to, well, what is the end goal of your hope? Right? Is the end goal of your hope just to make money? Is it for me? Or is it, like Sean says, exercising some form of caution to say, hey, this isn't about me. This maybe the end goal isn't for myself. but there's a really good thing that can happen here that can benefit the people who are going to be benefiting from this.
So here there's like, perhaps there needs to be a balance with this hope is also consider the pessimism.
Yeah.
To have a reasonable hope or balanced hope that something is reasonable to achieve. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Anthony?
Well, we had talked about Sean, when you were away. AJ and I had a great talk about pessimism. I don't know if it would fit too much into this.
Okay.
But yeah, the pessimism that we were talking about beforehand is the pessimism, or well, what would be the word? Existential despair is what we were more talking about, which is an absolute deprivation of hope, and I think it is definitely prevalent today. But AJ was talking about it in the context of Jean-Paul Sartre, and I was very privileged to be able to take a fantastic class on existentialism, going from Kierkegaard through Jean-Paul Sartre and a couple of other philosophers in my undergrad. But Jean-Paul Sartre's worldview was that existence precedes essence, which means, well, if you think about it, if you have a fork, that fork idea exists before the actual fork exists. So its purpose exists before its reality, so it can be used for what its purpose is.
Is this like the spoon in the Matrix?
I'm not sure.
Ooh, remind me of the Matrix. I love the Matrix, so remind me of this. It'll bring me back.
When Neo goes to visit the Oracle,
Ooh, okay.
and she's training her, I don't know, there's a bunch
One of those like little kids,
little
right?
kids.
Yes.
And he comes up with a spoon, and he bends the spoon with his mind, and Neo goes, how did you do that? And he goes, there is no spoon, or something. Is that how it goes? I don't know if I'm remembering that.
I think Sartre's point was more that there is no mind, because he was an atheist. He's like, there is no God to believe that you have a purpose. So if you don't have a purpose, then you just exist. And then it's up to you to determine your own existence. And so that's the stance that Sartre takes. He says something along the lines of, man is free, but he is condemned to freedom. And despair is then just a rational part of life, because we all experience despair at some point. But he says the only way to get out of that is to set goals and set goals and set goals, even though he knows at the end of the day he's a nihilist, like it all just goes to nothing. Whereas Kierkegaard, his idea was that the self, that's going to be a tough one, the self is that which relates to itself. In other words, Kierkegaard says there's all these different facts of life that we have to deal with. There's the fact that there is an infinite longing in our heart. There's the fact that we do have this concept of the eternal. We have the concept of the temporal. We have the finite. We have the day-to-day things that we need to do. But despair comes from not relating to things the way that we ought to. Because Kierkegaard presupposes a belief in God. And if there is a belief in God, then there's a moral framework and a way that we ought to be. So despair, under Kierkegaard's view, is that we are not the person who we ought to be. And that's why we despair. Whereas Jean-Paul Sartre's idea, because he's very pessimistic about the world, is this, well, despair exists, and the only way we can get out of that is to set arbitrary goals for whatever end we determine ourselves to be in need of pursuing.
Yeah, so that all comes back to theological hope. And Sartre sounds very depressing.
Well, I respect him for his honesty, because if you do take, I guess, any sort of higher purpose out of your worldview, then it is up to yourself to determine your existence. The problem is that you don't really have any form of framework to do that. You have no higher calling. You have no actual good, objective good.
Yeah, there's no universal good. It's just basically how you define the good yourself.
Yeah, and then it's like, what tools are you going to use for that, right? Like your heart's going to have certain longings, and Kierkegaard says, hey, there's a way that we ought to go about dealing with.
So speaking of like a universal good as opposed to an individually defined good, and then can you really pursue that because it's so independent from one person to the next?
Yeah. And it's like, what, like if you're trying to build a tower, you need to have some structure. You need to have some frames and to pour the concrete in to go higher. If you don't have any sort of moral framework, then you can't have any sort of ascetical upward struggle in your personal life. And I think that's what the virtues really enable you to do, is they are that concrete that goes into what a moral framework that's already being put in there. And it enables us to get higher and closer to our purpose. And hope is that idea that, faith is that we can get higher, but then hope is that this is worth it.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right that theological hope depends upon faith first.
Yeah.
You have to have faith first. Otherwise, you can't even begin to hope, as exemplified by Sartre. How do you say his name?
Sartre, I think, would be the...
Sartre.
Yeah, I was never good at French pronunciation.
We'll get the French listeners to provide correction of the exact pronunciation.
Yeah.
The interesting side note, not really related to what you're saying, Anthony, but kind of, about the theological virtues is that, as opposed to the moral virtues, you can err by deficiency, by a lack of it, and you can err by excess, by too much of it. The theological virtues you can never have in excess. There's no such thing as too much hope or too much faith or too much charity. There's no golden mean median. It's just more is always better.
Well, I guess because, theologically, like, it wouldn't be us that possesses that. It's technically us that are given those things.
Right. We're trying to emulate those things in perfection, which
Is infinite.
like you could say is infinite if
Yeah.
you gave it a numerical quantity.
Yeah.
But all we can ever do is hope to have as much of it as we're capable of.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. I just think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree.
And then presumption, you kind of think it's almost like too much hope, but I think it's actually a false hope. Yeah. Now, all that's really interesting and good, but I do think we should distinguish still like the secular hope. I don't think you necessarily need faith to have just sort of everyday hope,
Yeah.
which, I have a hard time applying the theological hope to financial planning, investment, use of money, the money virtues. I'm not sure how it relates.
I agree with purpose and setting goals.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with a goal, then, and you know that the goal is good. You know that
Well, let's
you're
talk
pursuing.
about charity because I think that's charity.
You think that's charity? Okay.
Yeah. So in my head, I was thinking of hope as this enabling virtue. I think that charity is a foundational virtue. I have to read my notes. Just give me a second here.
Edit this up.
So, okay, I think charity is the foundation upon which you can build the other virtues, your goals, your actions. I think when you can bring them back to charity as your founding principle, your guiding star, that's a firm foundation, and that gives you motivation for all these other things, right? That I'm doing.
Because it's selfless. Because if you
Right.
focus on love, it's just like everything is oriented for the good of others, and it's not about yourself. So, yeah, I mean, when you have that,
What is this goal? Like, what is money for? It's for the use of benefiting those around you, your friends, your family, right? Or your community. It's for some good purpose, which how do you even get to even desire a good purpose? It's out of charity. And to use the, classic image of building your house on the rock versus building it on the sand. If charity is not your foundation for determining what you want to do with your money and your goals and your finances and all that kind of thing, what's the alternative? It's pursuing money for its own sake or for your own use. And that leads you to a desire for, riches and wealth and accumulating more for its own sake, which I think is the equivalent to building your house on the sand. Because when you desire money for its own end, for itself, how do you think you will react when you are faced with adversity along the way? And I think about as an investor, right? If your desire is just more money, then when the market's crashing and you are tempted to fear that, it's down, it's going to go down more, I just got to get out now, like that's going to lead you to a poor action, a poor decision, just to panic when the markets are down.
Right.
And on the opposite side, when markets are doing well, everything's up, and when money is your primary purpose and your primary goal, and all you can do, or you're going to be tempted to greed, and I just want more and higher returns, and you're going to pile in when markets are up, which is obviously maybe not obvious to everyone, but as an experienced investor, that's the worst time to do both of those things: to sell when things are down and to buy more when things are moving a lot higher. And so if your primary motivation, I think it leads to poor outcomes.
Yeah.
But when you have charity, or when you have this good end, and a really good end is when you're doing something for someone else, or your family or whatever, you can fall back on that motivation when you are faced with adversity, and it will be the foundation that you can exercise good action and exercise good decision making, because your vision's not clouded by this endless desire for more money or whatever it is. Yeah, what do you guys think of that?
Well, I was going to say, bringing this back to kind of Sartre and his idea that it's goals that create meaning. If a person is just chasing material and finite things to create meaning, it means they would have faith that that's going to give them meaning. Their hope would be in those material things turning out well, but then because it's all directed at self, because I want these things for myself,
Then it lacks love or lacks charity.
It hinders your ability to even have charity in the first place, as opposed to having a ground of hope or having a grounding of faith where I believe my life is not about me. Then your hope is in the goodness of others, and then through that, charity is directed to others as well. So I think, you have to have faith, hope, and then charity, because one leads to the next. You have faith in a higher purpose, and then you have hope, which enables you to persevere through difficulty. It gives you freedom from discouragement because you're grounded in a very good thing. It's like, I don't know if people have heard about optimal work, but I know AJ, you did this a while back. It talked about the
He's one of the Transformers, right?
No, it's Optimus Prime.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, optimal work has this whole idea where when you work, you have to have high ideals for your work. Right. And these ideals should ideally be something like service, like the benefit of others. Because if you make it more self-directed or finite, something like productivity, any sort of challenge that comes up is going to hinder your ability to go after that finite ideal. For example, if you want to be as productive as possible, any challenge that you could not have foreseen at the onset of that task is going to make you be very frustrated, and it's going to be a hindrance to your growth. As opposed to if your ideal is to serve others, then any sort of challenge becomes an opportunity for growth in your ability to serve, because you're going to grow in tasks, you're going to be able to grow in virtue and fortitude and all of these different things. And so I think, having that faith in here's my ideal, that hope that this is worth it, it's an orientation towards greatness, and then being able to turn that into charity, where charity pretty much unites us with that primary cause of, well, our lives are not about us. That facilitating virtue that enables us to love others. It's the tangible act of loving others.
Yeah, I think you just said it right there. It unites
Yeah.
all the virtues, I want to say.
Yes.
right?
It's that common tie through which all other virtues have to flow.
Yeah, I'm going to be prudent. Why do I even want to bother exercising prudence?
Yeah, but what also enables me to be prudent, right? Like truly prudent, because it can be one thing to want to rationally be right for myself, right? To use right reason to determine right action, but the nobility of the virtue, I think, comes from the employment of charity within it, in that I'm trying to be prudent for a benefit that is not just myself. No? Right?
I mean, maybe it's a semantic argument. I don't think it enables. It makes me think it turns on prudence. Like if you don't have charity, you can't be prudent. But I don't know if that's true.
I know. I think you can be prudent, but I think it brings prudence to a different plane.
Okay.
For example,
It elevates it.
Yes.
So it is a semantic argument. I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like it motivates.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. But I was thinking more in terms of if you take the transformation from Aristotle to Aquinas, where you have Aristotle who talks about the man, like the virtuous man, and how it's good to be virtuous. I'm not sure Aristotle, and I'm not super well versed with Aristotle. I know his topics on the virtues and some of the other things, but the sense I get whenever I read that or read small quotes of it is that Aristotle is more focused on the man himself, whereas Aquinas, the beauty of his theology is that he brings others into the field of view when it comes to developing the virtues. So humanly speaking, it's very good for you to have these different virtues because it will help you to be the best man or person who you can be. But then brought to that extra plane of charity just perfects the virtues, if you will, because their end is in the other.
It makes me think that without charity, you're like Super Mario. No, Mario? Is he Super Mario or is he just Mario?
I think it's Mario, but then when he takes which I'm presuming you're alluding to, when he takes the mushroom, is that what you're alluding to?
I was thinking either the flower or the
Okay.
flower power, or when he gets the hat and he can fly.
Oh,
and he takes off.
That's the raccoon Mario. The raccoon Mario?
I think it's raccoon.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Does that not work?
I'd say it does. Yeah, it's like a power up. It's charity enables the fulfillment.
Allows
of
the power up.
virtues.
Charity allows the power up. That's what you're getting to.
Yeah.
But I'll come back to what you had mentioned, optimal work. And if you think about it, like, I guess maybe as a typical male, like working in our career, you can become addicted to these accomplishments. I want to move up in terms of position and responsibility and leadership. And as a result there, you get more financial compensation.
Yeah.
And
But it's fun. It's tangible.
yes. And then eventually after that is like, it's just this constant chasing. And then let's say, for example, you get to the top of whatever that corporate chain is. It's going to be fleeting. Where there's an element of elevation is you're putting purpose to these accomplishments along the way.
Yeah.
I'm doing these things for what? I think for myself is I'm doing these things out of love of family so I can provide them the opportunities to pursue things that they love.
Yeah.
Because I have more financial resource
Yeah,
to do
or
so.
service of a fellow person, because it's, hey, our work enables us to serve clients.
Right.
Our work enables other families to other parents to serve their children, or other people to serve their parents in some cases, right? When a prudent financial plan is enacted.
That's good. I have nothing more to add.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic treatment of faith, mostly hope, and then just brilliant.
But I like how you added like the elevation, the power up.
I think it's a good
Yeah.
point. And I think that this conversation kind of led to that fruition. So that's good. Anything else to add?
No.
All right. Brilliant. Until next time, I'm Anthony.
I'm Sean.
I'm AJ.
Thank you for listening.
This podcast has been prepared by Sean Gregory, who is a portfolio manager, AJ Sanson, and Anthony De Lazzari, who are associate investment advisors for IA Private Wealth Inc. Opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the portfolio manager and investment advisors only, and do not necessarily reflect those of IA Private Wealth Inc. IA Private Wealth Inc. is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. IA Private Wealth is a trademark and business name under which IA Private Wealth Inc. operates.